Bhushito Vyatachano Buddhachincho Vavande Vyasadipino Shri Guru Gorgandaiva Govindascha Ganaisaha Jayanti Patakaschacha Sarvesham Gurunartino. So we are continuing with Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and we have reached chapter 6 of the Adi Lila, a chapter on Advaita Acharya. Vande tam Srimad Advaita Charjam Adbhuta Chishtitam Yasya Prasada Ragyopi Tatsarupam Nirupayet. I offer my respectful obeisances to Sri Advaita Acharya, whose activities are all wonderful. By his mercy, even a foolish person can describe his characteristics. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya, Jai Nityananda, Jai Advaita Chandra, Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. All glories to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all glories to Lord Nityananda, all glories to Advaita Acharya, and all glories to all the devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Pancha shloke kohilo, Sri Nityananda Tattva, Shloka dvaya kohya Advaita Acharya Mahatva. In 5 verses I have described the principle of Lord Nityananda. Then in the following 2 verses I describe the glories of Sri Advaita Acharya. So this is what we were mentioning yesterday, right? The first 14 or so verses of Chaitanya Charitamrita are kind of establishing the conceptual foundation of Chaitanya Charitamrita, and there are in particular a few verses glorifying Nityananda, other verses glorifying Mahaprabhu, other verses glorifying Advaita Acharya, and then in the following chapters Kaviraj Goswami is elaborating on those verses, right? So there are 5 verses were glorifying Nityananda, and then in the previous chapter Kaviraj Goswami is elaborating on that. And then there are 2 verses describing Advaita Acharya, and now in this chapter Kaviraj Goswami will elaborate on that. And now he's quoting those verses again here. And it's very systematic, his style. Very organized. Mahavishnur Jagat Karta Maya Ya Yasha Jatyada Tasyavatara Evayam Advaita Acharya Ishvaraha. Lord Advaita Acharya is the incarnation of Mahavishnu, whose main function is to create the cosmic world through the actions of Maya. Advaitam Harina Dvaita Dacharyam Bhakti Shamshanat Bhaktavataram Isham Tam Advaita Acharyam Ashaye. Because he is non-different from Hari, the Supreme Lord, he is called Advaita. So the word Advaita means like oneness, right? Non-dual. And so this is a nice explanation why he is called Advaita, because he is one with the Lord. And because he propagates the cult of devotion, he is called Acharya. He is the Lord and the incarnation of the Lord's devotee. Therefore, I take shelter of him. And we can also mention about this previous verse, right? Kaviraj Goswami is describing him as an avatar of Mahavishnu. And as it says here, his main function is to create the cosmic world. And we can also remember, right, that Vrindavandas Thakur, he sees Advaita Acharya as Sada Shiva, right? So they have these different perspectives, right? But Srila Sridhar Maharaj harmonizes this point because actually Mahavishnu and Sada Shiva are very closely related, especially when it comes to the creation, because they're working together in that, right? And we hear the description in Brahma Samhita how Mahavishnu, he throws his glance like with the desire to create. And then because Mahavishnu doesn't directly, remember Shiva always does like the dirty work, right? And Mahavishnu, in different occasions you see, he's given like the difficult job that no one else wants to do. And like in the churning of the ocean of milk, right? Like he's the one who has to drink the poison. Gurudev quoted that line. It's from the Chatur Shloki of Bhagavatam. Anvaya Vyatode, Anvaya Vyatode, like that. Saying how we must directly and indirectly always search after the absolute truth. And how Gurudev pointed out how Lord Shiva, he sometimes has this role of like indirectly serving and supporting, and sometimes he's even on the opposing side, right? But in the case of the creation, we hear Mahavishnu. Because the Lord does not directly associate with Maya, right? So Lord Shiva helps out there, and so we hear Lord Mahavishnu throws his glance at the cosmic creation, and then Mahavishnu takes the form of that glance, right? And then he impregnates the material energy, and that's how it all begins. Right? So Srila Sridhar Maharaj harmonizes these differing views, right, of Kaviraj Goswami and Vrindavan Thakur. From one perspective, we can say almost the same. But of course, we lean more towards Kaviraj Goswami's version of things, right? And Saraswati Thakur made a comment like that. If there's ever any conflict between the two, then we always side with Kaviraj Goswami. He's giving more fine conception. So why is he called Advaita? Because he is one with the Lord. Right? Advaita means oneness. It's funny because normally we're not about Advaita, right? Advaita is used to refer to Mayavad, impersonal conception, right? That we Advaitavad, right? That we are one with the Lord. We're more in Dvaita, right? One with and different, right? But in the case of Advaita Charya, he actually is one with the Lord. So he can actually use that name, that title. And then he's an Acharya because he is spreading the teachings of Bhakti. And he also has this special, he's known in this special way by this title, Bhakta Avatar, right? And we also, in the Panchatattva, right? Because the Panchatattva is referring to these 5 different manifestations of the Absolute. And so, there's that verse, right? Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Sarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhakta Kyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam, right? And in that verse it's describing, who each of these members of the Panchatattva represent. Like what energy, what expression of the Lord they represent. Right? Gadadhar Pandit's the Shakti, and the energy, feminine potency representing that. In the case of Advaitacharya, his special position or nature is Bhakta Avatar. He's actually an avatar of the Lord, but in the mood of a devotee, right? In the spirit of a Bhakta. Advaita Jarja Gosai Sakshadishvar Jahar Mahima Nahe Jive Gochar. Sri Advaita Acharya is indeed directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. His glory is beyond the conception of ordinary living beings. Mahavishnu Shishti Koden Jagadadi Kaja Taravatar Sakshadadvaita Acharya. Mahavishnu performs all the functions for the creation of the universes. Sri Advaita Acharya is his direct incarnation. Jepuru Shishti Stiti Koden Mayai Ananta Brahmanda Shishti Koden Lilai. That Purusha creates and maintains with his external energy. He creates innumerable universes in his pastimes. Ichayananta Murti Kodem Prakash Ekeka Murti Kodem Brahmande Pravesh. By his will, he manifests himself in unlimited forms in which he enters each and every universe. So he's describing here these different, they're referred to as the Purusha avatars, right? That this Mahavishnu extends himself into two further forms, right? In the form of Mahavishnu, or also known as Karanadakashaya Vishnu, right? He's that, there's no word, right? If you say giant, what does giant mean? Unfathomably, unlimitedly huge entity, right? Who's floating in the causal ocean, and from his pores, right? All the Brahmandas, the universes are coming out with every exhalation.
Like frog spawn. Sorry, that's a terrible analogy, but it is like that. It is like that.
Oh, I don't know what frog spawn looks like. But it sounds very poetic.
Yeah.
I'll have to check it out.
I'm trying to, because the mind tries to visualize something.
Right.
They try to put it in a box so you can understand in three-dimensional terms.
Sure.
Of course we can't. But it's like that, it looks like that. Because there's then a smaller Vishnu lying down on the ocean and that. So in frog spawn, tadpoles moving around inside a bubble. So it was the closest thing.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the frog, female frog lays millions of eggs.
Oh, really?
And they're all in a big cluster. They're all come out from the frog.
Interesting.
So it was the closest thing I could think of. Anybody looks in the pond, especially in the summer, a small lake or river or something will find it. But yeah, so it's the closest thing, because there's millions. And we can't conceive of the giganticness of this form of Vishnu. It's like pretty big.
Yes. Well, it's like Gurudev said, like if we say big like the sky, like what does that mean? We can't even conceive of how great the sky is, right? So what to speak of the Supreme Lord, who's the origin of all, right? So with every exhalation, right, all these universes are coming out, inhalation coming in. And then that Mahavishnu expands himself into this further form of, what is it? Karanadakashaya, then Garbhodakashaya, right? And as Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, he's entering each and every universe and maintaining each individual Brahmanda universe. So this is being mentioned.
The biggest and the smallest.
Then the third form he expands into is the Kshirodakashaya Vishnu, who also plays the part of Paramatma, who's extremely small. Anor, what is it? Anor Anyan Mahato Mahiyan in the Upanishads. Greater than the greatest, smaller than the smallest. Sahai Kodinta Loya Pradhan Koti Brahmanda Kodanicha Nirman. Advaita Acharya helps in the pastimes of the Purusha, with whose material energy and by whose will he creates innumerable universes. Jagat Mangal Advaita Mangal Gunadam Mangal Charitra Sada Mangal Janam. So Mangal, right, is a very nice word. Mangal means auspicious, goodness. So Jagat Mangal Advaita. So Advaita Acharya is Mangal for the whole world, for the Jagat, very auspicious for the world. Mangal Guna Dham, he's an abode of all auspicious qualities, gunas. Mangal Charitra, his character is all auspicious. And Mangal Jar, his name is all auspicious. Koti Amsha, Koti Shakti, Koti Avata, Etaloya Shidje Purushaka Samsar. Mahavishnu creates the entire material world with millions of his parts, energies, and incarnations. Maya Jaiche Duyamsha Nimita Upadan Purushishvaiche Dimort. What happened here? Maya Jaiche Duyamsha Nimita Upadam Maya Nimita Hetu Upadam Pradam Purushishvaiche Dimorti Hoya Vishwashishti kore nimitta upadanaloya. Just as the external energy consists of two parts, the efficient cause, nimitta, and the material cause, upadan, Maya being the efficient cause and Pradhan the material cause, so Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, assumes two forms to create the material world with the efficient and material causes. And we have a very long technical purport here, which I'm going to let's read it. Let's read it today. Mm-hmm. There are two kinds of research to find the original cause of creation. One conclusion is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the all-blissful, eternal, all-knowing form, is indirectly the cause of this cosmic manifestation, and directly the cause of the spiritual world, where there are innumerable spiritual planets known as Vaikunthas, as well as his personal abode known as Goloka Vrindavan. In other words, there are two manifestations, the material cosmos and the spiritual world. As in the material world there are innumerable planets and universes, so in the spiritual world there are also innumerable spiritual planets and universes, including the Vaikunthas and Goloka. The Supreme Lord is the cause of both the material and spiritual worlds. The other conclusion, of course, is that this cosmic manifestation is caused by an inexplicable, unmanifested void. This argument is meaningless. So personal and impersonal, right? That there's a personal origin, there's impersonal origin. The first conclusion is accepted by the Vedanta philosophers, and the second is supported by the atheistic philosophical system of the Sankhya Smriti, which directly opposes the Vedantic philosophical conclusion. Material scientists cannot see any cognizant spiritual substance that might be the cause of the creation. Such atheistic Sankhya philosophers think that the symptoms of knowledge and living force visible in the innumerable living creatures are caused by the three qualities of the cosmic manifestation. Therefore, the Sankhites are against the conclusion of Vedanta regarding the original cause of creation. Factually, the Supreme Absolute Spirit Soul is the cause of every kind of manifestation, and he is always complete, both as the energy and as the energetic. The cosmic manifestation is caused by the energy of the Supreme Absolute Person, in whom all energies are conserved. Philosophers who are subjectively engaged in the cosmic manifestation can appreciate only the wonderful energies of matter. Such philosophers accept the conception of God only as a product of material energy. According to their conclusions, the source of the energy is also a product of the energy. Such philosophers wrongly observe that the living creatures within the cosmic manifestation are caused by the material energy, and they think that the Supreme Absolute Conscious Being must similarly be a product of the material energy. And this is the value of Sambandha Gyan, right, and revealed truth. Because actually, like, how can we come to any proper conclusions ourselves with our senses, right? As we just said, we can't even conceive of the sky. So it's common sense. We must search for some higher source of knowledge, right? You know, just like we can't really conceive where we are now, so we may turn to a map, right? Or something like that, or turn to an encyclopedia, someone who has some broader view, right? And so when it comes to the nature of the creation, we are helpless, right? So we must turn to someone who has that greater view. And the source of that knowledge must be from a higher plane, someone with higher vision. Since materialistic philosophers and scientists are too much engaged with their imperfect senses, naturally they conclude that the living force is a product of a material combination. But the actual fact is just the opposite. Matter is a product of spirit. According to Bhagavad Gita, so this is like Sambandha Gyan, right? And because with your empiric senses you can see all the pieces. But Sambandha Gyan is like how the pieces, the puzzle pieces all fit together. Right? What is the actual design and order and cause behind everything, right? Sambandha Gyan is telling us that. Otherwise, we're coming in contact with like disjointed knowledge, right? Just different pieces, but how they all fit together, we don't know. Right? So for this understanding, we must rely on a higher source of knowledge.
Like what relationships?
The relationship, exactly. Sambandha Gyan, how they all relate to each other. Exactly, yeah. And of course there's finer and finer expressions of that, right? Since materialistic philosophers and scientists are too much engaged with their imperfect senses, naturally they conclude that the living force is a product of a material combination. And it's actually just the opposite, right? The other way around. Okay, that's just what he says here. But the actual fact is just the opposite. Matter is a product of spirit. According to Bhagavad Gita, the supreme spirit, the personality of Godhead, is the source of all energies. When one advances in research work by studying a limited substance within the limits of time and space, one is amazed by the various wonderful cosmic manifestations. And naturally one goes on hypnotically accepting the path of research work or the inductive method. Through the deductive way of understanding, however, one accepts the Supreme Absolute Person, the personality of Godhead, as the cause of all causes, who is full with diverse energies and who is neither impersonal nor void. The impersonal manifestation of the Supreme Person is another display of his energy. So this is the Brahman. Therefore, the conclusion that matter is the original cause of creation is completely different from the real truth. The material manifestation is caused by the glance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is inconceivably potent. Material nature is electrified by this Supreme Authority. That's a nice way of putting it. I haven't heard it quite like that before. It's electrified. Very nice. Just like you can have like a light bulb, right? It'll just be like some dull matter. But if you connect it with an electric current, then it becomes bright and activated. So that's very nice. That's a nice one. I'm going to remember that. Material nature is electrified by the Supreme Authority. And the same way we could say, right, if we're disconnected with the Lord, we're just like dull lumps of matter, right? But when we connect with Krishna consciousness, when we connect in our relationship, then we become electrified, right? Because the soul becomes animated, right? But otherwise, we're just living in this dull plane of the mind, the body, and the senses, right? And the conditioned soul within the limits of time and space is trapped by awe of the material manifestation. In other words, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is actually realized in the vision of a material philosopher and scientist through the manifestations of his material energy. For one who does not understand the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his diverse energies because of not knowing the relationship between the source of the energies and the energies themselves, there's always a chance of error, which is known as vivarta. I'm going to read that again. For one who does not understand the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or his diverse energies, because of not knowing the relationship between the source of the energies and the energies themselves. So that's what we are saying. What is the proper relationship between things? As long as material scientists and philosophers do not come to the right conclusion, certainly they will hover above the material field, bereft of proper understanding of the absolute truth. The great Vaishnava philosopher Srila Baladev Vijayabhushan has very nicely explained the materialistic conclusion in his Govinda Bhashya on the Vedanta Sutra. He writes as follows. Okay, so this is an excerpt from the Govinda Bhashya. Oh, that's exciting. The Sankhya philosopher Kapila. So this Govinda Bhashya, I think most of you familiar with, right? This was a very kind of like landmark text, right? That Baladev Vijayabhushan wrote. It was the first like official Gaudiya Vaishnava commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. The Vedanta Sutra, of course, is generally considered very important text, right? Amongst the Vedas, it was the penultimate text that Vyasadeva composed before composing Bhagavatam, right? And it's very favorite to Brahmavadis and Mayavadis, those of the impersonal Islam, because it's in the style of the Upanishads, right? Giving very vague descriptions of the nature of Brahman.
Is that the four Vedas then? The Rig, the Sama, the Yajur, and the Atharva?
No, it came a little later, and it was it's a short text, quite short. And it was the last text Vyasadeva wrote before writing Bhagavatam.
Right.
Now, it's the one that begins Atato Brahma Jigyasa.
Right.
Now search after spirit.
But we wouldn't have a translation in regular circulation in our mission anyway. And
not in our mission, but you could easily. Oh yeah, it's a very popular, you could say, in some circles. It's very much emphasized by any Brahmavad or Mayavad school, because it's in the style of the Upanishads, which are giving very focused spiritual advice, and giving very vague description of the nature of the Absolute, right? Like he can run faster than anyone, but he has no legs, right? This type of thing, right? And it's emphasizing the importance of, because a lot of the Vedas, they're kind of mixed, right? A lot of the Vedic texts, they're very mixed with the ideals of karma, right? Human achievements in this world, right? And so the Vedanta Sutra and the Upanishads, they're exclusively focusing on the spiritual side. And so it's quite revered, amongst many circles. Yoga lineages, they'll give a lot of emphasis on it. Yeah, and we see the text as actually we see it with our own slant, right? It's open to a lot of interpretation. That's the thing about it. It's not giving specific knowledge. And so Baladev Vijayabhushan's commentary is very helpful, because he's showing how we can understand the verses from a personalist view, right? From a Vaishnava view. Yeah. And actually, this Govinda Bhashya came quite late, because previously, like Ramanuja Acharya, he'd written a Vaishnava commentary in the Vedanta Sutra. That would have been 1,000 years before or something. But the Gaudiya Vaishnavas didn't have one, because Mahaprabhu had commented that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. And you can actually see the the links, like the very first line of Srimad Bhagavatam, Janmad Yasya Yataha, right? That's the first line of, I think, the second verse of the Vedanta Sutra. So Vedavyas makes it very clear. He's like picking up the thread. If you have an unbiased eye, then you can see. Vedavyas makes it very clear. Srimad Bhagavatam is continuing, is going further onto what is described in the Vedanta Sutra. So Mahaprabhu made some comment like that. And it's actually also, it's kind of funny because it's actually mentioned in the Puranas, which were composed much earlier, which is like an example of how you have to get away from a linear conception of time.
Linear train of thought,
linear, because in, I think it's the Kurma Purana, it's one of the Puranas, which are the most ancient texts, right? And one of them, it glorifies Srimad Bhagavatam, which came much later from a linear perspective.
Time is funny like that.
But it mentioned that Gurudev would quote it sometimes. Arto Yam Brahma Sutra Nam. Right? Brahma Sutra is another name for the Vedanta Sutra. So Arto Yam Brahma Sutra Nam. It mentions that the Srimad Bhagavatam gives the real meaning of the Vedanta Sutra. And also it says it gives the real purport of Mahabharata, also the Gayatri Bhasya Rupo. So you can see that Srimad Bhagavatam is elaborating on the Vedanta, right? So for that reason, the Gaudiya Vaishnavas hadn't composed any text on the Vedanta Sutra. But then there was that incident, right, in Jaipur, because Jaipur is, and even now the temples there are Gaudiya Vaishnava. There's a lot of there's a strong Gaudiya Vaishnava presence there, and the main temple, the Govindaji temple, was they were following the Gaudiya Vaishnava conception in the worship of Krishna, and so they're worshiping Krishna as the origin, right, before Vishnu. And I think what happened is they wanted to install a deity of Radha as well, or something like that, but then this challenge came from this other group of Vaishnavas, I believe from the Ramanuja Sampradaya. And they're saying, actually we have to put the worship of Vishnu as higher. And they were opposing the style of worship of Krishna there, the Govindaji deity. And so there was this challenge. And the king had been running the temple according to the Gaudiya Vaishnava view. And then these other Vaishnavas came and challenged it and was pushing to change it. And the king and others, they were sad about this, and then they sent a message to Vishwanath Chakravarti, who's like one of the greatest scholars, right, in our lineage, and requested, please come and like help us. We need a real scholar, Gaudiya Vaishnava scholar, to help defend, right? And they were a little, rude about Krishna, right? This other group, Krishna's, like a womanizer, and his relationship with Radha, it is illicit, things like that, something like that. So they wanted to like defend the dignity of that their style of worship and their emphasis on Krishna Vrindavan as the highest, and so they called for Vishwanath, but Vishwanath at that time was very elderly, and so he sent his young student Baladev Vijayabhushan, and then he came. And he said, I'm here to defend, our conception. But they looked at him, they said, first of all, your lineage isn't even bona fide. Because in the scriptures, there's some statements that give criteria for how a bona fide lineage can be accepted, be identified. There's there's so many things mentioned, and one of them is that they must have their, how can you classify, like if you're, like you could say you're starting a political party, right? Then how can, not just anyone can just come and say, hey, we're starting our own group. Like they're going to be, you have to have a constitution and this and that and bylaws.
You must have Bhakti, Govinda Bhakti.
Well, they said, one of the criteria mentioned in the scriptures is that the Sampradaya must have their own Bhashya, their own commentary on the Vedanta, on this Vedanta Sutra text. And there were others, like a commentary on Bhagavad Gita and things like that. But there was no like official commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, because it was acknowledged that Srimad Bhagavatam is automatically commentary. So that's why there hadn't been one. But in these circumstances, he was being, demanded, where's your commentary in the Vedanta? And so Baladev Vijayabhushan, he's like quite young, like maybe late 30s, early 40s or something. And he said, okay, well, give me a few days, And he did it in like 10 days or something like that. And he went and he prayed to the Govindaji deity, right? And so that reason it's known as Govinda Bhashya, which has like a double meaning. Like Bhashya, I think it can also mean like speech, so like the words of Govinda, like he was empowered by Govinda, but also commentary, by the grace of Govinda, like that. So this would have been, I don't know, like 17 or 1800s or something. Not so long ago, actually. I found a copy of this Govinda Bhashan in our Vrindavan temple. And all, I don't know where, I think maybe it came from like Gurudev's collection. So I found all these like really rare books. And they were just like in this pile in a storage room in Vrindavan. It's like this, I have it here actually, I can show you. It's this big like Bengali copy, an edition. So yeah, my Bengali is not good enough right now, but I hope it is one day so I can read it. Yeah, so it was like a very significant text for our life. We visited that place. Actually, it wasn't we people always say Jaipur, but technically it was this little town outside of Jaipur. It's called Galta. And I heard about it from Krishna Kanta Didi. And so we actually visited there this time in India. And what they say is the courtyard, where it took place. We visited there. It's actually a really extraordinary location. It's surrounded by mountains and quite a beautiful area. And it was very interesting because I've never had an experience like that in India, because it's this big compound and there's a number of different temples on there, and it's also a highly touristic area. And so, what's that?
What did you say?
Touristic.
It's tourist.
Yeah, it's a popular tourist destination. So it was, and there's a famous Shiva temple, an ancient Shiva deity there. Hanuman. Oh, I'm thinking of Hanuman. Sorry. Yeah, not Lord Shiva. It's an ancient Hanuman deity there, and also there's a temple for Surya Dev as well. And so, and there's like beautiful architecture too. And so it was very interesting because actually hardly anyone goes there for the Baladev Vijayabhushan connection. And there were like busloads of tourists there. There was a big group of Iranian tourists, I think. And they're all like smoking in the parking lot outside. It was so trippy. And you actually have to pay a good amount to go in, because they get so many tourists, and so they're. So it was very interesting. There were, like, mostly people were there for the architecture, for the Hanuman temple, and then there's also a Sita Ram temple there. But then we were there for the Baladevi Vibhushan connection. I don't think anyone else was. And it's a beautiful area, and it was really cool to sit there and think, wow, this is where this debate took place, you know. Like this beautiful big courtyard, and you're looking up at the view surrounded by mountains. It's quite extraordinary.
So was that this time round, Vishaka?
Did you come that day, actually? That day, I think a lot of our group was tired out, and most of our group didn't come. I don't know if you came. Yeah. You would have remembered if you came.
I don't remember.
It was. I think it was just like 5 or 6 of us who went.
Oh, right. Okay. I don't remember.
Yeah, maybe you didn't make it that day. It was after we'd had lunch at Tatisha's place on like the second day.
Which place?
You know Satish.
Yeah. No, I didn't make that one actually. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Maybe you were unwell.
Yeah. A little bit sick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everyone was kind of winding down by that point in the pilgrimage. And it's quite wonderful to see, like all of these principal temples in Jaipur, they're all run by Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and you see in the main Govindaji temple, there are a lot of beautiful paintings of Mahaprabhu, and so it's very nice to see that connection there.
Do you think Srila Rupa Goswami shifted his headquarters when the Muslims came and he asked the Govindaji deity to move there? Was there some shift from Vrindavan?
Yeah, well, that was the thing. It didn't take place in his time. It was later.
Oh, it was later.
Yeah, as far as I understand, yeah, it was later. And then there's also debate because quite a few of these deities of the Goswamis, like Lokanath Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami's deity, quite a few of these deities later, they were moved to Jaipur. I'm not sure exactly why Jaipur was chosen, but it was chosen. Maybe because the king was very favorable to the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. But now there is some debate because some people say that, they actually came back to Vrindavan. And those are replicas that are there. So it's kind of funny. Like some of the Jaipur, what's that?
In Vrindavan, one time we were talking to one priest and we said, that deity went to Jaipur. No, he said. No, like they won't accept that.
There you go. Yeah, I hadn't realized that there was this debate. I just found out about it this time when I was in Jaipur. So a lot of the Vrindavan bhaktas say, no, they came back, right? And then the Jaipur people will say, no, they're here.
So they have double now.
Yeah. That seems like it's fairly common, actually.
Yeah, in the spirit of Rath Yatra wanting to bring Krishna back to Vrindavan, there maybe will be that mood then. Because Krishna never leaves Vrindavan, and if he does, it will bring him back. Yeah, something like that. He can't go,
We actually, this time also, because we didn't have a proper Parikrama guide for when we were in Govardhan. Padmanabha Maharaj was busy, and I'm not so familiar with the whole area, so we actually accidentally went to the temple that Madhavendra Puri established, which we're not supposed to go to actually, because it's a little too high up on the hill.
Down the hill into the village. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
But I saw that they've actually installed another Gopal deity there, right? I think similar features, and so it seems like it's quite common that they do that.
Why were we not supposed to go?
Because it's a little too high up on the hill.
Oh.
I mean, there is a parikrama path that goes there, and there are pilgrims who go there, but Mahaprabhu didn't like, and he actually mentioned specifically to Jagadananda Pandit not to climb Govardhan Hill to see that Gopal deity, who's now in Rajasthan also. But I think also the hill is kind of sinking because it's still quite low down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think previously it would have been higher up. Yeah.
Yeah, you told us it's sinking gradually.
I think that's mentioned, yeah. Yeah, I think that's actually described as one of the symptoms of Kali Yuga, right? Like the holy rivers will all dry up and these sacred entities, like Govardhan, they'll diminish. And so, yeah. Let's see. Well, maybe we'll stop there. Oh, well, we never read the commentary of Baladevi, but it looks a little long, so maybe we'll save it for tomorrow. Okay, we'll leave on a cliffhanger then.
Weren't we before reading then also something from Revealed Truth of?
I know some Vaishnavas do it, but actually I can't really do that.
No?
It's like I can't just shift like that. If I'm doing Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's Chaitanya Charitamrita. And we can read that in the evening maybe.
We're reading from the new books.
But I think they also finished it. Yeah, they were reading that and they
Both
finished
of
it.
them?
You finished devotion, Sridhar Maharaj's book.
From Chudani Maharaj and from Madhusudhan Maharaj.
No, we finished, I think, no, only one of them. I think
Devotional Treasure Chest, I think is what they were reading. Okay. Jai Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Jai Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami Ki Jai. Navani, do you want to sing?
No, it's okay, that's right. I need to drink.
Okay. Who hasn't sung? Did you? Prabhu, do you want
It's
to?
Asita's last morning here, maybe he should sing.
Sorry?
It's Asita's last morning, he's leaving on.
Yeah, I have to go after breakfast.
Okay.
Do you want to sing Hari Hari for him?
Yes, certainly, yeah.
Well, it's been so nice to have your good company.
Yeah, well, thank you, Vishaka. It's, was always an inspirer. Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha.
Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Nama.
Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha.
Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya
Namaha. Gopal Govinda Ram Sri Madhusudana.
Gopal Govinda Ram Sri Madhusudana.
Hari Gopal Namo
Shri Guru Gauranga Radha Giridhar Ki Jai, Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Hari Ram Sankirtan Ki Jai, Jai Gaur Premanande.
Vishaka Devi Ki Jai.